And so the defining characteristic of successful companies in a vibe coding era is legitimacy. I think that's a huge, huge factor that we don't understand yet.
But like today we're in a world where you can vibe code an app that, may or may not work, but let's pretend it does. Like you can vibe code an app on Replit or Cursor or whatever in a matter of hours, which opens up a whole world of building to people for whom that maybe wasn't accessible before, but people for whom perhaps the idea of understanding channel and distribution and content and fit to, something subversive is there. In this world, is it becoming more or less important than it previously has been to think about go-to-market? Or are you just sort of highlighting that maybe we're going through ebbs and flows where we're forgetting about this and we need to kind of reset to the norms?
No, I think we could not have stuck the landing better in terms of the timing for the book. Think about what you just said and the logical conclusion. Now, the ability to build a new product. I'm working on a piece on the 4 miscapitalizations of recent history. If you were a company that bought a bunch of hardware before cloud computing came along, then once cloud computing exists, you were miscapitalized. You'd bought enough hardware for the peak. That was a bad investment, right? When social media came along, if you had a big ad budget and now you were able to push stuff out on social media, you were miscapitalized. With I would say that the move from client server to software as a service was also a miscapitalization.
Sure.
Companies that were selling client server software when SaaS came out. We are at what I call the 4th miscapitalization in the startup world, which is that we now have the ability to generate new products very, very quickly with, call it chat-oriented programming, if you don't want to call it.
And so we're now doubling down on the engineers.
Right. And the problem here is one of legitimacy. Instead of having a CRM, I now have 50 CRMs I could buy, right? Because it's so much easier for someone to build a CRM, for example. And so now how do I choose which one? I can't go based on features because they've all got roughly the same features. I can sort of go on like taste and whether it looks right and how targeted it is at me. And I think that taste is an undervalued skill that will become incredibly important. If you want to vibe code, you want people who can choose the right vibes. But the reality is that the last bastion of competition is legitimacy. Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, has this great example. He wrote a post once about legitimacy, and he said there was a case of a Bitcoin, a blockchain currency, I don't remember what it was called, where the creator of the currency took 30% of the currency for himself, but everyone else just went, okay, we don't trust you anymore. We're going to copy the remaining 70% to an entirely new currency, and you're not part of it. And I may have got the numbers wrong, but the basic idea was no matter how good the math in blockchain for a cryptocurrency, the one thing that can defeat it is legitimacy. If 51% of people decide it's legitimate, they can just take it and go. And so the defining characteristic of successful companies in a vibe coding era is legitimacy. I think that's a huge, huge factor that we don't understand yet.
Well, and it is interesting because we talk about vibe coding. We talk about lowering the cost of production of software, of tools, whatever, that may extend to physical goods and hardware in the not too distant future. But there's parallels in music. There's parallels in art. There's parallels in all kinds of creative endeavors where the cost of production is going asymptotically to zero over time. And so, there has been this really interesting question of where is the value, right? Like if an AI can create a beautiful painting, then perhaps the act of actually the skill of painting has less value unless you have, people talk about brand, people talk about whatever. I think you're saying unless you have legitimacy, and legitimacy is something that is perceived, right? It is not inherent. It is something that is perceed and reflected from the people around you.
Banksy was way ahead of his time, right?
Yeah, seriously.
I think that idea that, I think we're going to see movies now where it says no AI was used in the creation of this movie in the same way that we saw things saying no animals were harmed in the creation of this movie. I think that we're also going to see, I love Cassie Korozov's assertion that AI gives us infinite right answers, each right in its own way. So then who chooses it, right? And so I wrote a thing a while back about what comes after the attention economy. And I think it's the outcome economy. And the reason I say that is it's almost paralyzing to be able to do anything. You can go find a YouTube video or talk to an AI about what you could do. And so I think an entire generation is going to be like, well, I could do all these things. And I love just reminding people, you can just do stuff. Like you can just do stuff.
You can just do stuff.
And
that's a meme online right now.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been going around. It's been going around X, mostly around vibe coding.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's the underlying idea here is that you can do stuff and you can try it out and you can be methodical and you can, keep iterating and all that kind of stuff. But if you imagine a smith training an apprentice, at some point they've worked the bellows long enough and the smith says, hey, come over here and make me a sword. He hands the person a chunk of iron, and if they can produce a sword, they're a smith. In education, we used to test people for math by seeing if they could get the right answer. And then calculators came along and we had to say, show your work.
Yep.
We could test whether they'd read something based on whether they could recall the facts. And then Google search came along and we said, no, you got to synthesize your ideas.
Yep.
Now we have something that can do idea synthesis. And so teachers don't know how to evaluate a student. The only real answer is a simulation, is to go build a sword. But the thing is, you can't really say build a sword when it comes to like business school, right? Like, what are you going to say? Go take your parents' money and start a business. And if it's successful, you pass. And if you don't, I'm sorry, you're also bankrupt.
But yes, sometimes, by the way, there are business schools that do that.
Absolutely.
Maybe not at parents' money scale.
Right. And also not at the grade 9 level, right?
Right. True.
But the ability to create simulations just got much easier.
Yeah.
So like educators can vibe code testing things and synthesis things and question things and so on. So I think we're going to see a huge, it's always important to look at changes in technology and not think of them as fixed, right? The response to AI is going to change things. One of the first music generative applications that came out, my family and I spent an evening goofing around with the 30-second songs it generated. They were pretty funny. But by the end of the evening, my sister was making an invite to her friends in song form that she sent to invite them to a party in Montreal. And I'm like, oh, I get it. When music is scarce, you pay for a song. When music is cheap, you use it as an invite.
Yes. And it opens up an infinite fractal set of use cases.
And so I think the question is, can we harness as a society enough of the benefits of that to pay the creators, either those on whom it was trained or those who are, behind the source material or whatever, that as long as we can avoid this becoming a huge concentration of wealth or power, and that may involve, like Bill Gates once said, taxing the robots. I just don't think society is set up to make rational decisions about how to share the abundance we're getting from technology right now.